let's talk about rebuilding trust again, because this is, of course, all of the stuff we're talking about really is the goal. The ultimate goal is to rebuild the trust, which is the foundation of the relationship, right? So I tell couples, I tell the guy in recovery, I say, look, this is going to be about 2 years before your wife even thinks of maybe trusting you again one day, and they kind of look at me shocked, right? And I say, yeah, maybe longer actually. And the formula is time plus consistency. So back to, the slip up. That's why it's so important to have the 24-hour tell, because I don't find it so much, I mean, maybe you have a different view on this, but I don't find it so much the slips that set that. So let's say he's sober 6 months and has a slip. That's not going to set the clock back 6 months. It might set the clock back a month or two, but if he slips and lies, that sets the clock back the full 6 months. Add on another 6. Okay,
it's worse. Yes.
Right, it's worse. So I just keep driving that home. It's so important. And the biggest trigger for guys is their shame. Okay, they don't want to tell because of the shame, and I tell them you have to push through the shame. This isn't about how you feel. This is about her need to have an honest guy. But time plus consistency, and if you screw up once and lie, anytime you set the clock back to 0. But about 2 years as a rule of thumb. Do you find that's kind of what you're hearing from partners as well? It's going to take a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 or 5?
Yeah, it's anywhere from 2 to 5, really, depending on if the number of slips and all the other contextual behaviors, the observable, the believed behaviors that we see. Because there's, just as an aside, you and I both know there's white knuckling, dry drunk kind of stuff where they're sober, but their character hasn't really changed, right? So you want to embrace, and she wants to see the full set of recovery tools being used, right? So one of the things that I hear, and I heard this from a well-recovered addict at this point, and he says, I'd rather lose you than ever lie to you.
Wow. Okay.
And that was a huge shift.
So he values honesty so much.
Now.
Right.
Now. Because fear of losing her just drove the lies deeper, the shame that he would get triggered into, all of those things would keep the truth at bay. Now he's just so in love with that value and with establishing that trust and maintaining that trust. He says, I would rather lose you than lie to you. So basically it's, how dare I withhold information from you? And if that means you have to leave me because of what I share, okay. But he doesn't want to ever lie again. So I think that's really critical to point out as well. But I think you're right. It takes a long time. It's consistency over time that she needs to see. He has to be patient. Oh, I'm just cringing right now for those guys that say, oh, come on, it's been 6 months already. Get over it.
Oh, no. I really coach them well not to say that. I say, look, don't, you can be clean and sober for a year, and you'll go to your wife after a year and say, hey, I haven't watched porn in a year. And she'll say, well, neither have I. You want a cookie? And I say, your wife won't give you cookies. I'll give you cookies.
Yeah.
I'll even buy a box
and
have them in the office. A trophy and medal.
I know.
I just call it a cookie, right?
Yeah.
You can come in here or go to your group and you will hear from us, great job, good work.
Yes.
I see the effort. You're doing great, but don't expect that from your wife. If you get a scrap of a cookie crumb from her, it's gravy.
Yeah, consider yourself
fortunate. Just think about it. All you're doing is the bare minimum of what you signed up for when you got married to begin with.
That's exactly, you take the words right out of my mouth. Yeah. I say the same thing about past polygraphs. Don't ever celebrate them with your wife. If she's happy about it, fine. But don't celebrate something for your faithfulness that you should have been doing all along. So again, same thing. Go off to your group, your sponsor, your therapist, talk to them about it, but not her. Unless they decide that is what she wants to do. Because some women are truly happy. It does give them that hope, right? So they want to participate in and support him in that way. So that's fine. Every couple's different, and I'll support her in whatever is meeting her needs at that time, right? So no, I think that's all really critical though, just to watch the words we use, I think, both ways. So speaking of which, what about the check-in?
This is why you need to check in. And the check-in is to balance two conflicting emotional needs, okay? She has a need for safety and to be kept in the loop of his recovery, okay? And he has the need to not have her breathing down his neck, every day, which I get. They're both legitimate. So how do you reconcile those two needs? So what I've come up with is the guy in recovery, here's the check-in, and this is what you're going to initiate it. And I ask her, how often do you want to check in?
Exactly.
Do you want it every day? Do you want it morning, noon, and night? Once a week? It's up to you, okay? And usually when I find starting off, it's usually an every day or every other day. And then as time goes on, it's, once a week, once a month, and then, you don't need them anymore, right? So, but I'm wondering, can it work both ways? Like, how can a partner check in so the conversation isn't so one way? Because he can do his check in and kept my bottom lines, my boundaries. Here is a trigger. This is what I did to deal with a trigger. And then she can just go, okay, thanks for checking in, which is kind of how I teach them to do it. But she's got a lot going on too, and she's got things that she's dealing with and questions and emotions and stuff. So what do you suggest for a check-in for a partner? Like how can that be more of a two-way conversation? I'm interested in what you have to say about that.
I really appreciate that, and I do encourage it, but I wait a little bit. I think initially
for the wife to check in?
For the couples to check in with each other.
Okay.
Initially, an initial could be a week to 3 months, depending on how quickly he embraces and dives into recovery.
Okay.
But there really, truly, as you already suggested, needs to be that foundation of safety for her first. Okay. We've heard about couples therapy sessions where it's like they just dive right into the communication issues, and it's like, wait a second, he just ran me over with a truck. I can't talk about communication issues right now. I'm still bleeding in the middle of the street.
Right.
So once the bleeding has stopped, so to speak, then that gives opportunity. And I do often hear women say, you know what? I'm working hard. I'm kicking butt in this recovery thing. You've devastated me, and I still manage to get out of bed every day.
Right.
And I've joined a group, or I've read these books, or I've talked to a friend about this, and that took a lot of courage. There's a lot of things that she can be proud of, that she may want to share with him to enlighten him. And it kind of serves two purposes, really. It does, as long as he's not in a shame-filled place anymore, it allows her to show the impact, how hard she has to work because of something he's done. But hopefully that's taken in a good, prideful way.
Right.
I'm proud of you. Like my husband has told me that 1,000 times.
Not to rub it in his face or
not at all.
brag.
But just say, you know what? No, this is still part of what I've had to deal with.
Right.
And
do you have a script that they use?
Basically, I let
improvise
her.
it?
I let her. No, we have a script, but I let her figure out what she's comfortable in saying.
Can you give me an example of how she might check in?
So basically, it would be okay. So for this week, I worked on so many exercises out of a certain workbook, or I read 3 chapters of this type of thing. I went to group. And then from there, that's where I get more specific around, well, do you want to read your step 6 to him? Or just leave it at that?
Right.
And then we always allow for questions back and forth, just for like 5 minutes.
Okay.
And they can't be like personal attacks or anything like that, but it could be a genuine, hey, honey, would you like to share your step 6 with me?
Right.
And if she says no, okay.
Okay.
But still, like, show that genuine interest in each other.
Yeah.
But the other side of it, so it's not just the impact that she's demonstrating, but sometimes, like I said, she is genuinely so proud of herself, and she needs that affirmation back from him. And I mean, these are the people that have hurt us the most in the world, but they're also the people we need to support us the most in the world.
Yes.
And so there can be a lot of value if she's in a good enough place to share with him, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm working on. I know I raged at you at the beginning, and I did and said inappropriate things.
Yeah.
I'm keeping that under control now. This is how.
Right.
Right? Like anything like that, because trust can work both ways.
Right.
I know he has maybe a lot more work to do. His consequences for his actions are a little more severe.
Right.
But there's probably some stuff that she needs to work on as well. And if she's willing to share it, and he's willing to hear it, it's also a really good hint to the guys. Great chance for you to demonstrate your empathy.
Right. Another thing I run into, and I'll admit sometimes it's frustrating, is I'll see a guy coming in, and we're working with some kind of compulsive sexual behavior, and I either meet his partner once, or I never meet his partner, and they seem to have no interest in doing anything themselves to deal with this in terms of while seeing me or any therapist, doing any reading, joining any support groups, looking up any resources, and it kind of, I get how for some women, their attitude is like, you just go get fixed and let me know when you're better. But I have a hard time understanding how they just want to take no initiative to help themselves. Is it because they just see it all as completely his issue, like and they have no responsibility to heal themselves, or what do you think? Because it baffles me, honestly.
Yeah, well, it baffles me too, to be quite honest, because
Okay.
I'm like that type A personality, and when I see something that needs to, within myself or whatever, I go after it. I
Right.
can't. It's not in my nature
Right.
to sit still.
Yeah.
But, having that space and having sympathy for those women that I have since come to me after a long delay, what I do hear from them is, yeah, you broke it, you fix it. Oftentimes it's so traumatic that they are stuck in what I call like a level 1 victim thinking. And I think we all need to go there at times. That's where you go to kind of collect yourself, brush yourself off. It's how long you stay there becomes the problem. Okay, so she's been victimized, but she doesn't have to live like a victim. And so sometimes she just needs that time to process and just kind of figure this all out. And did this really even happen to me? I mean, there's a whole trauma fog that can happen for quite some time. Fog. So when she's been traumatized like that,
I've called it the fog of addiction. But
no, it's a trauma fog where when she's been traumatized like this, either over time with escalating behaviors or a big D-Day type of explosion discovery, that can often put her in a state of paralysis, so to speak.
Okay.
And so even if there was part of her or an old part of her that would want to dig in deep, she might not even be capable. It might be all she can do to feed her kids that day.
Right.
So I do have a lot of patience and respect for that. The other side of it that I've heard, which is a little bit more motivating, so you get out of victim mode and you start getting a little angry. Anger can be used to fuel momentum. It actually can. So when I start hearing women will have said to me, I was just so mad that, why should I put in hours and hours of work? He's the one that did this. But there's an anger to it. So I'm like, oh, this is good. She's getting ready to make a change. And then I think we've used this analogy before, but ultimately, again, when the timing's right, I will say to a woman, yes, I hear you. I'll do all the acknowledging and validating that she needs. But I'll say, you know what? I know it's unfair that a drunk driver hit you. And, he'll have his day in court and all that sort of stuff. But you're the one lying in that hospital bed. Do you ever want to walk again? You're going to have to do the work.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that really kind of, there's no amount of restitution, any jail time, any fines or anything that will make her get better.
Right.
It sucks.
It sucks. It's not fair. She didn't ask for it.
Nope.
She doesn't want to be here.
No.
But you have to follow doctor's orders if you want to heal.
She's going to have to do the physio.
Right.
She's going to have to do the praying if she's a woman of faith. She's going to have to eat certain things, eat healthy, all of that stuff she's going to have to do if she wants to get better. And everyone's threshold for when that switch finally flicks is a little bit different.
Yeah.
I've seen women that have been in, whose D-Day was even like 2 years ago, and they're only just now coming for help because they realize they always thought time would help or his work would help. And when she realizes that, gosh, he's been really good and sober for a year. And I'm not any better. I'm still questioning trust, and I'm like, she's really starting to think more deeply. That's when she's ready to work on herself.
Well, what I've found, and this is discouraging for the guys in recovery, is they jump right in, embrace recovery, group therapy, reading books, the whole accountability, and a year goes by, and they're clean and sober a year, and she's asking the same question she was a year ago. And then at some point I got to step back and go, I'm sorry, but you need to address this, like the partner, okay? Because it's so discouraging. And I know I tell them, don't you're not going to get a cookie and all that stuff. No, and he
still needs to be
but
patient.
But they are really working hard, and they're still being called lying bastards, cheat, effing this and that. Like I'm talking real serious verbal abuse. And he's doing everything he's supposed to be doing, right? So I guess, my hope and wish, and I understand that comes out of trauma and then the betrayal trauma and everything, but my hope and wish for partners is that they, for their own sake, take ownership for their mental health, really is what it comes down to, right? You need to take ownership for your mental health. I would say that to anybody, really, whether they're going through this or not. right? He's doing everything he can, but he can't fix you. Only you can fix you.
Well, and I talk to them when women express that sort of behavior to me. What I say to them is I talk to them about their return on the investment. So I
Oh,
said,
okay. Can you explain that?
well, at the beginning, peppering him with those questions probably got more and more out of him. Even if there's been like a beautiful full disclosure, but she was getting, if I can say this, like a little bit of a hit every
Okay.
single time. Well, now he said there was a blue dress involved.
Right.
Before he just said it was a dress. Oh, like she'll start hearing all these little things.
Okay.
So if you can track with me, she's actually getting something out of this, whether he realizes it or not. Whatever that
payoff.
is, there is a payoff
The payoff.
for a certain period of time. Well, then it becomes a habit. So then there's this transition. So there's no longer a payoff, but it's become such a habit and a
Right.
way of being, she can't even see it now. So what I'll say to her is, what's the payoff? What's your return on investment? And if she can't tell me, then I'm like,
Right.
then it's time to stop. We
But-
need to work
right.
on that. And that's where self-boundaries
Right.
come into play.
Because if you've got no new information in 6 months, there is no new information.
And polygraph substantiate it, and
right.
he's doing therapy, and I wouldn't think so. I mean, come
Right.
on, we've all been wrong. Some stuff may have come out later that he finally remembered or something. But all of that, those anomalies aside, for the most part, yeah, that's where I lovingly challenge her on her own value system. And in the famous word of Dr. Phil, it'd be like, so how's that working for you?
How's that working out for you?
Right? Because she'll then say, yeah, that's the emotional hangover I talk about. So if she
Right.
goes into these rages or peppering him with these questions 6 months or to a year later,
Right.
she's getting drained
Right.
from that.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Absolutely. And I'm
Right.
like, so what would the opposite of that look like for you? And so
Right.
I do some future visualization for her. And then we really set a plan and some accountability and
Yeah.
consequences and things so she can change her behavior if she wants to. I don't force anybody. She has to want it.
Right.
But me creating some of that awareness and how it's impacting her on several different levels is usually quite eye-opening.
Let's talk about the polygraph for a second. A lot of people are surprised, and we're in Canada, and so it's not, and the States are like 10 years ahead of us anyway, and they, our mentor, Doug Weiss, and, I know he's influential on you as well, but I remember I was on the phone with him one time, and he said, because he knows Pat Carnes, another well-known guy, and he said, the difference between me and Pat is Pat says, I believe the sex addict, and Doug says, I believe the sex addict after the polygraph. Right?
Yes.
And I know in his intensives, the first thing they do on the first day is the polygraph.
polygraph.
So people are surprised that this is available to them, and it's not a criminal polygraph. It's called a therapeutic polygraph.
That's right.
And it's yes or no questions, very time specific. Like they're phrased in a certain way. But I've over the last few years, and I think we've kind of worked together on some of these. I can count on one hand how many I've done. But in some cases, the partners absolutely want it, and they want the follow-up as well, and they make that a condition of staying in the relationship. So that may sound crazy to some people, but for some people, that's what it takes. And what's your thought on the polygraph, and what's some of the feedback you've heard from the partners on the polygraph? And do you think it's justified?
I very much do. I think it's one tool in our toolbox.
It's a tool.
It's a point in time.
It's not the tool.
No,
It's
so
a tool.
I always encourage
Right.
women in that way, and I remind them this isn't the end all be all. Okay. However, it's quite effective in giving that fresh start, clean slate kind of way of thinking. It helps her control her imagination. As I mentioned earlier, women will often say, "My imagination is worse." Than what
Right.
actually
Okay.
happened. So when she can get some solid information, and then the other thing I say to people, going back to our trust conversation, is trust but verify.
Okay.
So this gives her the freedom to breathe again and go, oh, he passed those 3 questions. Okay, okay, I can move forward now.
Right.
It still hurts. I'm still processing, but that's okay. That's out of the way. What do I like? Let's move forward.
Yeah.
So I absolutely believe in it. Many, many times it is a condition. So we talked about slips and relapses. It's usually you're out until you get a polygraph. So I know nothing else has been going on.
Oh, okay.
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 So there's the
Right.
emergency type of polygraphs.
Okay.
Which we don't want too many close together because they're not quite as effective
Right.
according to my examiner. But I also believe in those sort of check-in type of polygraphs. So
It's like every year.
well, as Dr. Weiss would suggest, even in that first year, depending on the nature of the acting out, it can be quarterly.
Okay.
or every 6 months just for that first year.
Right.
And assuming every one of those is passed, then you go down from there in frequency. And so it's become a very effective tool. For some men, they'll say it actually helps hold me accountable.
Oh, for sure.
Although that's
Yeah.
not really the intent, but if that's a side benefit, of
Yeah.
course. But really, it's that trust building, and it really, I can't stress enough, it gives her a chance to breathe.
Right.
It absolutely does.
Right.
And so I'm really a strong advocate for it. I know there are people out there that say they're bogus and unreliable. Not in my experience.
Right. Mine neither.
I've done quite a few. Not, I don't do them
No,
myself
referred-
personally, but I refer.
referred us, yeah.
So I've worked with quite a few, and I think 3 or 4 of them have failed,
Oh,
and legitimately so.
okay.
They really
Okay.
were withholding something.
Right.
It might not be big, but it was sensitive enough on the exam that it got picked up.
Okay.
So, and I also want to stress what you had already mentioned, that this is not a forensic exam. So
Right.
it's very much meant for therapeutic. So
Yeah.
I caution people and say, please, please, please be very careful who you choose to work with.
Right.
Because a lot of times if they're used to dealing with police investigations, offender type of things, they're looking to catch the addict in a lie.
Right.
Our type of therapeutic polygraphs are meant to verify the truth.
Okay.
So there's a
The point
different way
distinction, right.
of thinking.
Right.
So ideally, if our clients have never done a polygraph before, they're usually done after a full disclosure.
Right.
So again, it's that fresh start I mentioned where they
Right.
can kind of, and follow up with a polygraph to say, yes, that's everything. I swear it's everything,
Right.
and here's the polygraph to prove it.
Right.
The maintenance ones after that are usually just typically, you still sober?
You kept your bottom lines.
Basically.
Right.
Yep. Anything like that.
Yeah.
So no, it's a very powerful tool, a one-time tool in terms
Right.
of, sorry, I should say a point-in-time tool that you can use periodically. But it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, well, I often find that just the look on the guy's face when I mention polygraph is quite
Yes.
indicative of whether he's been completely honest or not. Because honestly, I'd say more than half the time, just the fact that he's willing to do a polygraph is enough for the partner.
Yeah.
He doesn't even need to do it. But if he's like, yeah, you know what, I'll do it. That's fine. She's like, okay, if you're willing to, that's enough for me, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so Jennifer, I just want to address one more issue with you, because this isn't really something I come across, because the guys I'm working with are in recovery. That's why they're coming to see me. If they decide to go do their own thing, they don't come and see me anymore. They just, they're those clients that just sort of disappear, right? I never hear from them again, and they're out there acting out. And like you said, Dr. Phil, how's that working out for you? I don't know. Sometimes they come back 6 months or a year or 2 years. I have them come back a year or two later and say, you know what, I wasn't ready. Now I am. Okay. But how do you work with partners that are with an addict that's not working recovery? Because that has got to be hard.
It is, and it happens all the time.
So I want you to speak to
unfortunately.
that. So anyone that's watching this now that has had the discovery, but their partner's not owning up to it, or he's minimizing it, or not, just not really wanting to embrace recovery, what would you say to her?
Well, that's where, again, I'll do a values assessment and really figure out what's at play for her. Sometimes she's happy, I use that term lightly, to stay for financial reasons.
Right.
Right? So yes, she's hurt by these behaviors, but not enough to leave because of finances.
Right.
Sometimes it's because of the kids.
Right.
Sometimes it's because of her faith. Maybe
Right.
she's in a type of religious organization that would shun her for such, for leaving him.
It almost sounds like she's trapped.
Sometimes like that. And I always encourage her that you're not. So we explore her values in depth so we can find out what's really at play here.
Okay.
Because again, I can't stress enough, with that awareness, that insight, personal insight, now it's not a secret to ourselves anymore. Now we have choices.
Okay.
So if you know that finances are one of your big values, then I empower women to go, then it's your choice to stay for money reasons.
Okay.
Okay. As opposed to I'm trapped. You flip it around and go, I'm choosing to stay for this. Okay. So there's values work we can do, but the biggest thing, Paul, are boundaries.
Okay.
Okay, so she does have to keep herself safe, even if she chooses to stay with a non-recovering addict, depending on the nature of the acting out behavior. Even if she thinks it's only porn, I will always encourage her to go get tested for STDs.
Right.
Okay, so there's a physical safety component.
For sure.
Everything that she can do for self-care. Okay, so if she's being drained by him and his acting out and having to run the whole household kind of thing, she needs time for herself to rejuvenate. Those are really, really big things. And whether she does that within a group setting or like a free online forum or talking to people like us, you need that extra help as
Right.
well to get through this, and just have someone to talk to remind you you're not crazy, that what you're experiencing is truly painful, and that, you know, there are ways that we can sort of work with it. Up until the point where she may choose to leave.
Right. And that would be consulting the lawyer, sort of planning for worst case scenario.
Well, the plan
like
B
being
stuff.
practical about it.
Yeah, it may take a woman 2 years to sock away some money. She may not
Yeah.
work outside the home.
Right.
But maybe that's something that she really needs to consider doing, and not to encourage secrets, but just kind of tuck that money away and
Right.
build on it, or go out and get new job training if you have been a stay-at-home mom.
Go back to school.
We do have lots of options, and I know some women really don't like it when we say this as professionals. No one is so trapped that they couldn't pick up the kids and go to a shelter.
Right.
I've heard women describe some pretty horrific situations,
okay.
and I'm not telling them what to do, but I lay some options on the table, and that is one.
Right. Fair enough. So just explain a little bit of exactly what you do in your coaching practice, and how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I do lots of things. I do workshop type of stuff where women can just come and sit silently and listen,
Oh, okay.
or mostly online. I do Facebook Live videos on conversations such as this
Okay.
every Tuesday at 11 at
Okay.
Dawning Hearts. I also do one-on-one coaching, so that would be private sessions with women, either in person or mostly on the phone, because I
Okay.
coach women from all over the world.
Right.
That's the beauty of being a coach. I have that liberty.
Okay.
And then I do healing groups. I try not to call them support groups, although we do support each other,
Okay.
because they really are meant to be forward moving. I have found some support groups to kind of keep women stuck a little bit, and that's not me. I can't, as a coach, I can't sit by and let that happen. So we use Facing Heartbreak. We use Doug's Partners 100 Exercises book for partners
Right.
of sex addicts, Married and Alone,
Okay.
for intimacy anorexia, and Worthy. So those are
Oh.
his 3 books, plus Stephanie Karn's book, Facing Heartbreak,
Right,
are my
excellent
top
book.
ones to go
Okay.
through. And although we will talk about other life things that are happening related to those books, those give us the momentum and accountability to just keep moving forward.
Right.
So those are once a week phone calls with very small, intimate groups.
Okay.
And then I host secret Facebook groups for those individual groups of women, so that they can get to know each other even better
Right.
between phone calls.
Okay.
The last thing I'll say is, yes, I highlight that I'm a coach and I have been trained. I've got betrayal trauma background as well, so I've been certified in that. But the other thing I can do for women is I can act as a consultant, which is whereby she may really just have no clue. Like, what is a boundary?
Right.
So that's where I will go in, and I do.
What is sex
I can't.
addiction?
Yeah, I can't just pull this out of her. Well, what, as a coach would say, well, what do you think a boundary means?
Right,
It's
right.
like, come on.
No.
No, I will do some of that consulting piece, or
Okay.
I've always said you'll learn as much from me in my life as to what not to do
Right.
as what you should do.
Right.
And then the other piece is mentorship. So going back to my personal experience, I'm very open with women. I don't use their time to share my story. I allow them to ask me questions, and then I check in and say, do you have any other questions? Was that enough? I'm very open, and that's the mentorship role, so that they can see someone that's been in recovery, successful recovery for so long,
Right.
that there is hope, and this is kind of what it looks like. So I kind of help, and that shows up, that consulting, coaching, and mentorship all shows up within my groups, one-on-one, my
Right.
Facebook videos,
Right.
all of that engagement that I have with everybody.
Awesome. I think that's I think that's great, Jennifer, and I really appreciate that you're there for our partners at what can often be one of the most difficult things that they ever go through. We need more people like you, and I just have really appreciated collaborating with you and working with you over the last few years.
Thank
and
you.
I know
You
you
as
do
well.
great work. So thanks for getting out there and getting, sometimes you get your hands dirty. It's a messy situation, right? So thanks for getting in there and getting in down in the trenches and getting dirty. But I know you've been helping a lot of people. So I'm hoping anyone watching today that wants that extra support will reach out. The information will be there for them, and I hope that you get to make some great connections.
Thank you. Well, and I have to say kudos to you for being partner sensitive, because I have worked with therapists that are just starting to get on board. They've been so addict focus, and
Right.
understandably so. They need a lot of care and concern at the beginning, but almost ignoring what the partner is going through.
Right.
So the fact that you're even collaborating with me, interested in these conversations, trying to understand the other side of it,
Yep.
will go a long way for your clients, and just even for the individual addicts that you work with, because that just comes out of you. And
Yes.
so I really appreciate your approach to this as well. So thank you.
Yeah, and I know it goes back to something Dr. Weiss said to me, that there's 3 recoveries happening: the addicts, the partners, and the relationships. And that really just kind of opened my eyes to the bigger picture. You know, it's not just about the addiction or the compulsive behavior. You know, it's the relationship. It's everything. So yeah, no, thanks for that. Give me a high five.
Good work.
Thanks for coming today. It's been great chatting with you.
You too. Thanks.
All right.